Good morning, Year 11. It's Mr. Cooper here. I'm really sorry that having made this change of teacher that I'm not going to get to teach you this week. But we're going to carry on with 3 video lessons this week, and then hopefully next week you'll be back in school and we can get back to normal. So we're going to start today with a bit of revision of something that you did towards the end of last term. In the next 2 lessons, we're going to revise 2 of the topics we've identified on the foundation revision list for the mock exams. And all of the teachers are doing this same sort of thing now. There are 6 topics on that revision list that we've identified that we would do lessons on, 6 topics that we said we're going to do starters on, and the rest it is down to you. And hopefully you will find that revision list on class charts if you haven't already done so. A reminder that we also set you a past paper over Christmas, and I look forward to taking that in from you the first time I see you, which I hope will be next Monday, and I will mark that and give that back to you. So standard form. Standard form takes large numbers and small numbers and writes them in a standard form, and that form is, it writes them as a number between 1 and 10. 1 is allowed, 10 isn't, so you can have 9.999 but not 10, multiplied by a power of 10. And I just want to go through a few example questions today, and I've attached this sheet to go with today's work. So I'm going to be referring to this. So if you've got a printer, it's helpful if you've printed that out. If not, you can look at it on the screen, because I'll sort of put it on the video when I want you to pause and go through some questions on your own. I'm going to ask you to submit your answers to the questions I ask you to do today on class charts using their submission function. That will just give me a chance to see how well you cope with this, but it also indicates who is engaged, and I'm very much hoping you're all engaged, but it just means we can chase up anyone who, for one reason or another, isn't managing to access the videos. Over this week, this work we're going to be doing is really worthwhile, so I hope you're going to keep the notes. I hope you've got some paper and a pen, and that you're going to start today with an objective, standard form revision, and the date, 5th of the 1st, just like we would if we were in class. So I'm going to write some large numbers in standard form and then get you to try some for yourself. So standard form takes a number between 1 and 10. It takes a number and writes it as a number between 1 and 10 multiplied by a power of 10. So here's 250. Right, so I'm going to go through this the long way and then remind you of the quick way. If I divide 250 by 10, I get 25. That's not a number between 1 and 10. If I divide that by 10 again, I get 2.5, which is a number between 1 and 10. Bingo. How do I get back from 2.5 to the number I started with, 250? Well, I've got to multiply by 10 and then by 10 again. So I've got to multiply by 10 twice, or multiply by 10 squared. So we say, right, 250 in standard form is 2.5 multiplied by 10 to the power of 2. Now, I don't know how Mr. Borthwick taught you to do this quickly, but I always use my jumping decimal point method. So, this is the reason that it works, but I never bother doing that. I always say, okay, with 250, the decimal point's there. We don't bother writing it because there's nothing after it, but that's where the decimal point would come, after the units column. So I jump that decimal point to get a number between 1 and 10, 2.5, and then I just count the number of jumps. I do 2 jumps, so it's 2.5 times 10 to the 2. So that's the quick way of doing it. This is the reason it works, but you don't need to worry about that every time you do it. So let's do a couple of others. Here we go, 1,100. That's where the decimal point is at the moment. I'm going to jump that decimal point to here. That makes it 110. That's not between 1 and 10. I'll jump it to there. That makes 11.00. That's not between 1 and 10. I'll jump it to there, 1.1. Bingo, that is between 1 and 10. How many jumps? 1, 2, 3. And remember, the reason for that is that if I start with 1,100 and divide by 10 and then divide by 10, and then divide by 10 again. I get my number between 1 and 10. To get back to where I started, I'd have to multiply by 10 3 times. Let's do this one. Decimal points there. 33, not between 1 and 10. 3.3, yeah, is between 1 and 10, and that was 2 jumps. 48,000, there's the decimal point. 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps needed. So that's 4.8 times 10 to the power of 4. And 5,900,000. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 5.9 times 10 to the power of 6. Just going to add one more example, actually. It's not on the sheet. But if it had been 5,009,000, here's the decimal point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's still 6 jumps to get a number between 1 and 10. And it's 5.009. Now, why did I just say 009, not 009,000? Well, those zeros at the end don't change the number, but I do need to put those 2 zeros in there. Okay, so looking at the sheet I've attached, I've actually done, for the first question, A through to E. So I'd like you to pause the video at this point and have a go at F all the way through to J. So you're going to do F, G, H, I, and J. And I'm not going to show you the answers to those. I'd like you to submit your answers to those on class charts. I'll remind you of that again. But just pause the video and have a go at those at this point. Okay, we can also use standard form for very, very small numbers. Still, we need to write it as a number between 1 and 10 multiplied by a power of 10. This is potentially a bit confusing. Let's have a look at this one here. 0.0025. Now, to turn that into a number between 1 and 10, I haven't got to divide it by 10, I've got to multiply it by 10. So if I multiply it by 10 once, I get 0.25, not a number between 1 and 10. If I multiply it by 10 again, I get 0.25, not a number between 1 and 10. If I multiply it by 10 again, I get 2.5, is a number between 1 and 10, bingo. And to get back from there to the number I started with, I've got to divide by 10 3 times. Divide by 10 cubed. But standard form asks us to multiply by a power of 10, not divide by a power of 10. And so this is where we need to remember that another way of writing that is to say multiply by 10 to the power of minus 3. These two things are synonymous. They mean the same thing. Dividing by 10 cubed is the same as multiplying by 10 to the power of minus 3. So this number here is 2.5 times 10 to the minus 3. Now, actually, you don't need to remember this because there's a shortcut, jumping decimal point method. So here's the decimal point. I'm going to jump it so I get a number between 1 and 10. This time I'm going to have to jump it this way, unlike the big numbers where I was jumping to the left. So 1, 2, 0.25, still not a number between 1 and 10. 3, 2.5, yeah, that's a number between 1 and 10. How many jumps? 3. And you just need to remember that a small number will give you a negative power of 10. So if you can remember why, that's brilliant. But if you can't, it doesn't matter. Just remember a small number will always give you a negative power of 10. Big numbers give you positive powers of 10. So let's do this one. Is this a small or a big number? It's a tiddly number, so we're never going to get a negative power of 10. Jump the decimal point. 1, 2, 6.7. That's my number between 1 and 10. So it's 6.7. How many jumps? 3. This one here, if I jump the decimal place once, I get 0.303, not a number between 1 and 10. Jump it again. 3.03. That is a number between 1 and 10. How many jumps? Remember, this is the same as saying divided by 10 squared, multiplied by 10 to the minus 2. To take this number back to this number, that's what I have to do. I'd have to divide by 10 squared, which is the same as multiplying by 10 to the power of 2. So I'd like you to have a go. I've done the first three from this question, so I'd just like you to have a go at C through to G in that second question. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you did 5 of the big numbers for me, and I'd like you to do 5 of the small numbers, writing them in standard form. Okay? So you've done question 1, F, G, H, I and J. I want you to do question 2, C, D, E, F and G. Pause at this point and do that, and then we'll move on. So what we've done so far is we've taken large and small ordinary numbers and written them in standard form. What we are sometimes expected to do is to work the other way, take a number in standard form and write it as an ordinary number. And all we do is we reverse the jumping decimal point approach. So I've got 3 numbers here that I want to write as ordinary numbers. I'm just going to have a quick look at the power of 10, because if you remember, big numbers have a positive power of 10 and small numbers have a negative power of 10. So I know this one, 10 to the power of 6, this is going to be a big number. So I'm going to write big there just to remind me. 10 to the power of 2, going to be a big number. 10 to the power of minus 4, which remember means the same as dividing by 10 to the power of 4, that's going to be a small number. Okay, 3 times 10 to the power of 6, so there's 3, and we don't normally write a decimal point if we've just got the number 3, but that's where it is. So I need to multiply this number by 10 6 times. So that's moving the decimal point up 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's where the decimal point now goes. I've got gaps here. What do I put in the gaps? Hopefully you remember you put zeros. When I read large numbers like this, I start at this end and go in threes. So that's my hundreds, that's my thousands. So I know this number is 3 million. So hundreds, thousands, millions. This one here, 4. There's the decimal point. We don't normally bother writing it. I've got to move it up 2 places. 1, 2, fill it in with zeros. That's 400. That's 400. Bit more complicated. I know this is going to be a small number. So 9.45. So I'm multiplying by 10 to the minus 4 is the same, if you remember, as dividing by 10 to the power of 4. So I've got to divide this by 10 4 times. And that means the decimal point is going to move down. I'm going to get smaller. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where my decimal point is now. So I've got zeros to fill in there. But I also really want to put a 0 in front of the decimal point. Otherwise it just looks a bit odd, doesn't it? So that number, when written as an ordinary number, is 0.000945. Okay, so I've done this one, and this one from the sheet. So I just want you to do a few others for me. Could you do for me, I'll change colour, could you do C, D and E? Those are examples of large numbers. And could you do I, J and L for me? Those are examples of small numbers. So I'd like you to take those numbers which are written in standard form and write them as ordinary numbers. Again, have a go at that now. Press pause and have a go. Okay, final step then for today's lesson. Sometimes you see numbers that look like they're written in standard form, but they're not. I don't know if you can see what the problem is with each of these numbers. We've definitely got a power of 10, but what we haven't got is a number between 1 and 10. We've either got numbers that are bigger than 10 or smaller than 1. So these numbers need to be adjusted so that they are written in standard form. So 45 is not a number between 1 and 10, but if I divide it by 10, I get 4.5. That's 10 times smaller than 45. 4.5 is 10 times smaller than 45. I want this number to be the same as this one, so what I need to do is I need to balance it up. So I've made this side 10 times smaller. So to balance it up, I've got to make this side 10 times bigger. And if I multiply 10 to the power of 7 by another 10, it becomes 10 to the power of 8. So I made this side 10 times smaller, so I got my number between 1 and 10. I had to do the opposite on this side, make it 10 times bigger. How about this one here? So 13.8, not a number between 1 and 10, but if I divide it by 10, I get 1.38, which is a number between 1 and 10. I've made that 10 times smaller, so I need to make this 10 times bigger. Remember, that doesn't turn it into 10 to the power of 30. This is 10 times 10 times 10, so if we make it 10 times bigger, it just becomes 10 to the power of 4. Okay, this one here, this number's too small, so I've got to make it bigger. I've got to multiply it by 10, and then by 10 again. So I've actually made that number 100 times bigger. I multiplied it by 10 twice. So I've got to do the opposite to this. I've got to make this smaller 2 jumps. So it's going to become 10 to the power of 2. I moved this one up 2 jumps, so I had to move this down 2 jumps. Now this last one is fiddly. There's no two ways about it. I need to make this number here 1, 2, 3 jumps bigger. I need to multiply it by 10 to the power of 3. I've made this side bigger by 3 jumps, so this side needs to become 3 jumps smaller. And this is the fiddly bit. Smaller than minus 5, 3 smaller than minus 5 is minus 8. It's very easy to get that confused and put as minus 2, but you've got to remember that with negative numbers, the smaller you get, the more negative it gets. So the last thing I want you to have a go at on the sheet are these questions at the bottom, where you've got to adjust the numbers so they're written in standard form. And I'd like you to have a go at all of those. I haven't done any of them here, but they are pretty similar. So I'd like you to have a go at all of those and include that in your submission. So you're going to submit to me from first question F, G, H, I and J. From the second question C, D, E, F and G. From the third, I know it's question 1, but it's the third question on the sheet. The ones I identified, there were 6, weren't there? There were 3 large numbers and 3 small numbers. And then you're going to do the whole of that last question for me. And if you take a photo of that and submit it using class charts, and I look forward to marking that, and we'll have a little review of it maybe tomorrow once you've done that. Now, if you have any issues with class charts or whatever, then use my school email address. Remember, I am Mr. Cooper, I am not Mr. Borthwick, so make sure you use my school email address. And there we go. I'm really looking forward to teaching you. Like any good football manager, I've brought some of my best players with me, so welcome to those of you who've joined the group. And I look forward to seeing you next week, but do make sure you're engaged this week so you don't fall behind. Good stuff. So this is Tuesday's lesson, so you'll get another lesson on Wednesday and then a final lesson on Friday this week. I look forward to marking the work you submit from today. Take care.